She came into Copper Ridge like a ghost from the dead, but every step she took delivered warning. The paper wad in her jacket pocket crinkled with purpose, its sound as alive and unsettling as the things she carried. The town didn't change after 10 years of bitter years. Same weathered saloon sign creaking in the wind, same faded paint on the general store, same sheriff's office where justice had passed on long ago. But Magnolia Voss, she wasn't the same kid they'd dragged screaming into a wagon like livestock. Her boots thudded on the wooden planks in front of Fletcher's general store. Through the grime-streaked window she saw him, Tobias Crow, her father, restaking canned goods with the same hands that used to count silver coins. 20 pieces, all she'd been worth, less than a decent horse. The doorbell rang. Tobias's eyes rose. Color drained from his face like water from sand in the desert. His hands trembled, a can of beans spilling onto the floor. She said nothing, simply extended a yellowed piece of paper. 7 names, penned in careful, ghostly letters. Number 4 was Tobias Crow. "Maggie," he croaked, his voice like old leather. "Sweet Jesus, is it you?" She regarded him, not as a daughter, but as a witness. There was no longer any trace of the man who used to braid her hair at night, only a broken soul with fearful eyes and a guilty mind. "You remember me?" she said coldly. "Good. That'll make this easier." He stumbled backward, knocking something off the counter. "You don't know. Times were hard. Your mama wasn't well. We had mouths to feed. I didn't want the silver." 20 pieces, she interrupted. "That's what Cora Lane gave you. I've spent 10 years wondering if you counted them twice." His shoulders fell. "Where have you been?" She refolded the paper and stashed it in her coat. "Learning things. Things like how to trace down 7 people who treated a starving kid like property." The door creaked again. Heavy boots. She didn't have to turn around. She recognized that voice before he actually said anything. "Well, well," drawled the slow voice. "Tobias, you didn't mention you were having visitors." Her jaw was locked. Sheriff Silas Ward, name number 1 on the list. Strange thing about ghosts, he noted as he approached, spurs jingling. They seem to pop up when you're working the hardest to put them behind you. Maggie spun around, her hand on the Colt hidden beneath her coat. Ward looked older, heavier, his badge battered. But those eyes, cold, calculating, hadn't changed in a day. "Still wearing that star, Sheriff?" she said. "Still guarding Copper Ridge?" He smirked. "As safe as it's ever been. And you? Just breathing here disturbs the peace." Tobias tried to interject. "Now, Silas, there's no need to—" "Shut your mouth, Crow," Ward snapped, hand on his gun. "I'm talking to her." He sized Maggie up like a poacher gauging wounded game. "Hear about a woman raising hell in Deadwood. Rigged poker hand. 3 men discovered face down in the ground. You know anything about that, would you?" She had an inscrutable face. "Nope. Working cattle on a ranch in Colorado. Quiet life." Ward guffawed, his whiskey-heavy breath making his eyes go damp. "Now that's amusing, because that little girl in Deadwood, she also carried a scar, same as you, left cheek. She acquired it defending herself when we threw you into that wagon, huh?" Her mouth gritted. She remembered. His belt buckle, the pain, the blood. That was the day she grew up. "Many folks have scars," she said. "Not like that." Ward stepped closer. And the men of Deadwood? They'd all bought children during the years of famine, paid good money for ones who couldn't say no. The air was thick. Tobias looked like he'd collapse. "So I'll ask you straight," Ward growled. "You gonna make trouble in my town?" Maggie didn't blink. "Just visiting relatives. Being respectful." "Uh-huh." Nodded on purpose, hand on his gun. "Pay them then. And get out. This town's already full of ghosts." He turned around, hand on the door, paused. "And Maggie, that list in your jacket? You'd be wise to watch who you show it to. Some folks don't mind seeing their names mixed up with the dead." The door was slammed behind him. Quiet. Tobias's whisper. "He knows about the list." She nodded. That changed everything. Her plan was to take her time, to make them squirm before justice came. But now, she'd have to draw them out faster. "Who else knows I'm here?" "By now?" Tobias swallowed. "Everyone." Outside, Maggie saw the town watching her, faces in windows, behind doors. They were waiting to see what the ghost girl would do. But they didn't know she hadn't come alone. Waiting outside the stable, Daniel Cross stood in the sun. A witness, a saddlebag full of evidence that could bring down the whole house of cards. Testimonies, photos, names. 3 years of investigations bound together by one thing, taking down the men who bought and sold children like cattle. But first, she had to get the rats out. "Tell folks," she told Tobias. "The girl they sold is back. She remembers everything. And she's at the old Murphy house tonight." He looked at her. "That house is a mess." "Sure," she said, quiet and polite. She went away, then turned back. "Oh, and Tobias, when they arrive for me, and they will, remain nowhere in sight. Blood contaminates everything it touches." The Murphy house sat on a hill, its broken windows looking out over Copper Ridge with empty eyes. She chose it for 2 reasons: clear view of the town and an exit in the back straight out into the canyon where Daniel and 2 horses waited. As the twilight tinted the sky a rust hue, she stood just within the window, one single candle burning to make eerie shadows dance. A signal, and then she sat in the darkness, Colt on her lap, and waited. The first to come was Ezekiel Marsh, the banker who signed the deal 10 years ago, limping up the path with a shotgun in hand, circling like a wary predator. "I know you're in there, girl," he called out. "We need to talk." She didn't move. Fear made people predictable. Then 2 more arrived, Cora Lane and a rough-faced hired man with quick hands. They took up stations around the house, trying to trap her. But the 4th curled her stomach, a rustling in tall grass. Sheriff Ward, squirming like a snake, gun clutched in his hand. 4 now. 4 names on the list. And they didn't know. She wasn't trapped inside that house. She waited to set it all ablaze. 4 of the names on her list, now standing just outside that dilapidated house, thought they'd caught a broken woman. They had no clue the trap wasn't set for her. Maggie approached soundlessly, gaze on the growing flicker of lanterns down the hill. More figures climbing up the hill. More names, maybe all 7, to wipe out their past sins. She lit a second candle in the back window. "Daniel, it's time." But before she could return to her seat, a sound tore the air, one she hadn't expected. A cry. A child's cry. Gentle, strangled. Outside, she was paralyzed. Another muffled sob followed, raw and frantic like a rabbit in barbed wire. Maggie's meticulously built plan, designed to trap monsters, was disintegrating. She'd been ready for bullets, for blood, for fear. But not this one. Not a child. "You hear that, girl?" Cora Lane's voice carried through the groaning wood like a snake's hiss. "That's little Emma Briggs, 8 years old. Daddy owes me more than he can pay in 3 lifetimes." Maggie's fingers trembled around the butt of her Colt. 10 years. 10 years since they'd sold her like cattle, and they were still selling her. Cora's voice was thick with cruelty. "This is how it's done. You just get out that front door, hands up, and sweet little Emma goes home with Mama. Get any tricks, she's gone for good." Maggie glimpsed her through a crevice in the wall. A small girl, honey blonde hair tangled, dress torn, face smeared with tears. clutched tightly in Cora's arm like a captive. Sheriff Ward emerged from the shadows, his pistol trained on the house. "We know you've got friends out there. Call 'em off, or this gets ugly fast." Ezekiel Marsh hobbled up beside them, emboldened by the threat of numbers. "Should have stayed gone, girl. Should have let sleeping dogs rot." Maggie's mind raced. Daniel was waiting in the canyon. One whistle and this would become war. But Emma would be caught in the crossfire. She had to buy time. "What do you want?" she screamed, voice steady. "Easy," Ward screamed back. "The list, and any duplicates. You give us that, we're out of here." "And if I don't?" Cora's laughter rang out, rasping and saw-edged. "Then Emma learns the same thing you did, that sometimes children are more valuable sold than salvaged." That was it. That was the line they crossed. Maggie inhaled, fire burning in her lungs but steady. "Fine," she yelled. "You win. I'm coming out." She edged towards the front door, but did not open it. Yet. "Before I surrender, I've got something to say," Ward growled. "Get on with it." Her words arced out into the night. 10 years ago, 7 men in Copper Ridge sold 9-year-old girl for 20 silver coins. Tonight, 4 of them stood outside this house, threatening to do it again. Her words echoed across the valley. In town, lanterns burst into light. Folk emerged from their doors. A peaceful, sleeping town now holding its breath. She walked on. Banker Ezekiel Marsh, saloon owner Cora Lane, storekeep Tobias Crow, Mayor Harrison Webb, Dr. Luther Voss, and cattle baron Royce Barrett. They treated me like cattle, and now they're treating me like that again. "Shut up," Ward roared, fear creeping into his voice. But Maggie wasn't done. "If you were standing where I stand, surrounded by thugs with a child in their grasp, what would you do? Remain silent and hope they lived up to the deal? Or make a scene and ensure the world knew? Tell me in the comments. I have to know. Which team would you be on?" A bullet shattered through the window to her left. The night exploded. Lanterns flared across Copper Ridge. People poured from doorways, clutching rifles, gathering their children. The town was awake now, angry and armed. "You stupid girl!" Ward screamed. "Look what you've done!" Marsh panicked. "We gotta end this, right now!" But Cora snapped, still calculating. "Stick to the plan. Girl for the kid. No one else has to know." "Too late for that," Maggie screamed. "Everyone in town is looking now. You lay hands on that child and you won't make it down the hill with a belly full of buckshot." Below, the crowd swelled. Dozens of faces, radiant in lamplight. People who'd not remembered to bury their doubts about the town's decade. People who'd lost children. People who remembered the years of hunger. Someone shouted, "This is your fault, Ward. You were supposed to protect our town's children." Ward's firearm trembled. His voice cracked. "Everyone remain calm. This is official business. Return to your residences." No one moved. That badge, which once shone like authority, now seemed more like rusty tin. His authority was draining with every gasp. Maggie leaned into the instant. "You desire a trade, Cora? Let us conduct it here. Now, no trickery, no deception, just us." Cora's voice faltered. "Don't be foolish." "Something amiss?" Maggie cut in. "Scared to have folks find out who you truly are? Scared they'll learn that fancy saloon of yours was built on blood money?" Too close now. To lie. "Final offer, Cora," Maggie said. "Let her go and I'll enter. Hold on to her. And explain to all these people why a little girl has a gun jammed into the nape of her neck." There was an eerie pause. Then, "Emma, honey," Cora drawled, her voice syrup-sweet. "Go on home to your mama. Tell her Miss Cora says hello." The girl took a step forward, free but petrified. Each of Magnolia's 7 names had gathered, each one believing they'd ensnared a lone girl, none of them realizing the snare was set for someone else. Rising quietly from her chair, Maggie crossed to the window. Shadows crept along the ridge. More were on the way. More names. Perhaps all of them. She lit a second candle in the back window. It was the signal. Daniel Cross would be preparing, waiting in the canyon below. "Time to collect what is due," she whispered. But then outside there was one sound that shattered her focus, the faraway, agonized wail of a child. Pleading, small. Out there in the dark somewhere, another child was caught in this trap. "You hear that, girl?" Coralane's voice drifted in, venomous. "That's little Emma Briggs, 8 years old, a photograph of a child. Her daddy owes me more than he'll ever have." Maggie's fingers shook with rage. 10 years passed, and still they were at it. Still selling, buying, threatening children, still scavenging off the weakest like vultures. Coralane's tone turned syrupy, venom lurking beneath the sweetness. "This is how it gets done. You go out your way, hands up, and Emma gets to return home to her mama. You get all hero on us? She gets a long ride. Little girls do not return from places like that." Maggie watched through a crack in the wall as Coralane held the trembling girl in a blue tattered dress. Emma's face was streaked with dirt and tears, her eyes stilled in fear. Sheriff Ward huddled in the grass, holding a gun. They were moving in on the house. "What do you want?" Maggie yelled, buying time. "The list," Ward said. "And any copies. Turn it over and this ends quietly." "And if I don't?" Coralane sneered, her face as hard as shattered glass. "Then little Emma discovers what you did at her age, about how little girls get sold to settle debts of grown men." Maggie's rage snapped. She'd been ready for bullets and blood, but not for standing by as another child is offered on the altar. That was a line she would not cross. "All right," she screamed back. "You win. I'm coming out." She headed for the door, running her hand down the latch, but second thoughts before going out prompted her to utter in a clear, loud voice, "Before I surrender, there is something that I have to say, and you all have to hear." "Cut it short," sneered Ward. 10 years ago," Maggie screamed, loud enough for the town below to hear, 7 people in Copper Ridge sold a 9-year-old girl for 20 pieces of silver. This evening, 4 of them are standing outside this residence, threatening to do the same to another child. Her voice cracked across the ridge like a clap of thunder. In Copper Ridge below, lanterns glowed to life. Doors creaked and swung open. Citizens poured out onto the streets. The hillside filled with faces, men and women with guns, children peering out from under skirts. A town stirring into an old nightmare. "The names on my list," Maggie continued, "are Sheriff Silas Ward, banker Ezekiel Marsh, saloon owner Coralane Lane, storekeeper Tobias Crow, Mayor Harrison Webb, Dr. Luther Voss, and cattle baron Royce Barrett. They sold me like cattle, and now they're going to try it again." "Shut up," Ward shouted, his voice breaking. But Maggie wasn't finished. "I have evidence, papers, pictures, the testimony of other children. You hurt Emma now with all these witnesses around, and you'll answer to more than just the law. You'll answer to them." A shot was fired. Glass broke next to Maggie's head. The bullet whizzed by her, a warning. Panic set in. "You fool child," Ward yelled, desperation in his voice. "See what you've done." Angry voices came from the crowd. "This is your fault, Ward," somebody screamed. "You were supposed to protect our children." Ward's gun shook between the house and the mounting horde. Maggie's hour had come. "Cora," she yelled, "trade here. No tricks, just us." "Don't be stupid," Coralane spat. "What's wrong? Afraid they'll recognize you for what you are? That your saloon was constructed on the backs of stolen children?" The crowd crept closer. Maggie saw the doubt spreading through them, recognition blooming on faces, mothers who'd cried through hungry winters, fathers who'd buried empty cribs. "Last chance," Maggie called. "Let the girl go." For a moment, silence reigned. Then Cora Lane hissed, "Emma, honey, run to your mama." Miss Cora says hello. The girl stumbled forward, too scared to run. Maggie called gently, "Come here, sweetheart. Come to the house. You're safe now." But as soon as the child got off, three others moved forward out of the darkness: Mayor Webb, Dr. Voss, and Royce Barrett, each of them with a gun in hand. The last names. Sweat-damp Webb addressed the crowd. "Citizens of Copper Ridge, that woman is a criminal, a killer." The other two flanked each side of the hill, trying to push the crowd around and twist the story. But it wasn't working. "And what about our children?" Clara Doyle wailed, her voice echoing above the deceit. "What about the ones who vanished?" "That's yesterday's news," Ward growled, but his voice was cracking. The weight of it settled over her like a heavy shroud. For 10 years, she'd hated this man, dreamed of the moment she'd watch him answer for his betrayal. But looking at him now, broken and hollow, she realized he'd already paid. Every single day. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. Tobias looked up, stunned. "You're what?" "I apologize for it all. The starvation, the desperation, the decisions that felt impossible. I apologize you had to go through it by yourself." "I do not deserve your pardon." "Maybe not," she said quietly, "but I do deserve to grant it." She opened her coat and placed a leather pouch the size of her hand on the counter, her share of the payoff for dismantling the trafficking ring. "This won't bring them back. But maybe it'll help you start over, somewhere the ghosts can't follow." He glared at the pouch as if it would vanish. "Why?" "Because to carry hatred is to drink poison and hope somebody else dies." "I'm done getting poisoned." She walked away, then returned. "For what it's worth, if I'd been in your shoes, with children starving, I might have done the same thing." The door at the front jingled as she stepped out into morning light. At her back, Tobias wailed, not with regret, but something gentler, something sweeter. The wail of a soul beginning to heal. Daniel waited by their horses, packs heavy for the next town. "Ready?" he said at last. Maggie glanced at Copper Ridge, this town that had forged her in fire and pain. Then she rode her horse, looking out towards the horizon. "Ready." 3 years to the day later, Maggie Voss was named the youngest woman ever to be made a federal marshal to handle crimes against children. During the following decade, she broke up 7 rings of traffickers, rescued over 200 children, and had their abductors brought to trial. Daniel Cross was her law partner and spouse. They had a quiet wedding, with families they had reunited to witness the ceremony. Together, they founded a ranch in Colorado where rescued children could be rehabilitated before being returned to family or adopted into new families. Emma Briggs emerged in Copper Ridge, a town that evolved from one built on secrets to one that glowed like a beacon of hope for the downtrodden. She recounted the story many times of the woman who had saved her, and others were inspired to do what is right. Tobias Crow used Maggie's gift to start anew in Oregon. He opened an orphanage school and spent the rest of his years making sure that no child in his care ever went hungry or was rejected again. The 7 guilty women and men languished for decades in the territorial prison. Their names were forgotten by history, remembered only as a warning. This is what happens to you when you take from the innocent. But Maggie's story, her strength, rang out far outside the boundaries of Copper Ridge. It became witness that even in the darkest recesses of the West, justice could triumph. That sometimes the kids we save grow up to be adults who rescue others. That hurt, when met with intent, can be turned into strength. And ultimately, that's the most revenge of all, shattering the cycle of harm. and having it shatter with us. Now click on the video on your screen to hear a story even more powerful than this one, where justice rides faster, courage burns fiercer, and a single decision changes everything. Because the West wasn't just built on grit and guns, it was built on those brave enough to stand when standing mattered most.